Hello and welcome to the show. This is part of a three-part series about what is metamaterials. So this is part one, where we'll be talking about Torchlight Dividend, or the Spinoff. In part two, we'll be talking about metamaterials, the company, how it works, what the future is for metamaterials company, etc., products, etc. And part three is going to be about shareholders, who owns it, and the squeeze. Is it a gamma? Is it a short squeeze? What's possible? Who knows? So for now, we'll be talking about metamaterials and the possible Torchlight dividend or spin-off. Let me start off by saying I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. So with that, let's start. So FYI, this particular video is just about the Torchlight dividend. I've got another video about the spin-off that's around December 3rd or so, or December 4th was uploaded to YouTube. So you can check it out. It's called the Spinoff Update, and talks about $120 per barrel oil and $150 per barrel oil in 2023. And what could happen if it actually spun out. So for now, we'll be talking about what happens with dividends. So let's recap how this actually works. So first off, in the beginning, there was Torchlight and metamaterials, and they got together and they decided to merge and then split things out. So Torchlight had oil and gas assets, which are basically undeveloped land with oil. Metamaterials is a totally different company. They've got a lot of patents. They do R&D, the type of stuff, and they're working on metamaterials. I'll describe what those are in my second part of the series. So the idea was that they would get together, merge, and then spin out a new company called Metamaterials under a stock symbol MMAT, and also Torchlight shareholders would get Series A preferred shares. These shares were never intended to be traded. Basically, what that meant is that Metamaterials would not spend any money or time to make these shares tradable on any exchange. They wouldn't do any filing fees or anything like that, right? So the intention is that, if you're a Torchlight shareholder, you get these shares, and you just hang on to them. And the reason you hang on to them is that eventually you'll get a dividend from a sale of oil and gas assets. And those are the Torchlight oil and gas assets, the undeveloped land, right, with the oil. That was the idea. So that happened. The two companies merged. We wound up with metamaterials and Series A preferred shares, and things were moving along smoothly. So everything got converted. But somewhere along the way, the shares that were never meant to be traded, they became tradable. Somebody else, not metamaterials, not Torchlight, nobody that we've talked about, somebody else spent time and money to make these shares tradable on the over-the-counter exchange. And they have their reasons for doing that, but in either case, the shares became tradable. This was not part of the plan, but this is what happened. We have not yet received the dividend from the oil and gas assets. That is in the works. So we don't know if it's going to be a cash dividend or spin-out. So we don't know yet. This particular set of slides, or this presentation, will talk about a cash dividend and what you could expect for a cash dividend. There was another video that I made that would talk about, what might happen if there's a spin-out. All of this is speculation, of course, right? So these calculations are based upon a video that was made by RollerPigeon, and she came up with the original calculations. This is her YouTube video. It's called Special Dividend Update 10/25/23. I recommend that you check it out. She's got a great channel. She talks about this stuff in detail, and it's all there. So it's based upon the RollerPigeon's method of calculating how much the oil and gas lands are worth. And we tested this RollerPigeon's method by backtesting it against another sale that took place. Conocco-Phillips, they wound up buying about $9.5 billion worth of land from Shell. So, if when we use the RollerPigeon's method to backtest, when we use the RollerPigeon's method on the Conocco-Phillips land deal, it works out very, very close. So, I believe in this method, and you can check out the backtest on a YouTube video. Links will be provided, of course. Okay. So, what are the actual oil and gas assets? They're from Torchlight, and they consist of 134,000 acres in something called the Oro Grande Basin. There's some 12,000 acres of something called the Hazel Project. There was another 1,000 acres, which was less than 1% of something called Winkler, and that's taken care of, that's sold already. But the result of the whole Torchlight shares is that all this land has about somewhere in the range of 3.7 billion barrels of recoverable oil at 10%. Okay. When the Torchlight shares were issued, there was a tweet that came out by George Palikaros, the CEO of MMAT, and he indicated that almost 165 million shares were issued. So we know how many shares there are, we know what the land is, we know how much oil is there. And what typically gets reported is the amount of land that's sold and the average dollars per acre. So that's what everyone reports. However, the land only has value because there's oil in the ground. So if there's no oil in the ground, the land doesn't have any value, right? So the price is determined by how much oil is in the ground, really. And the point is to get the oil at a cheap price, and then you sell it into the market, right? That's the whole point of the game. So the value of the land is based upon the amount of oil that the land, that the land has or has been determined to have, right? If you get a top-notch geologist, he'll tell you, how much land is in there. I mean, how much oil is in the land, right? He'll do studies and all that. The geologist involved in this was a guy called Rich Masterson, and he's a top-notch geologist. He's got a huge track record, and he's done wonders in the past. So anyway, the key factors is how much oil is in the land, and also the price of oil at the time of the land, at the time of the actual sale, right? So those are the key factors that we really need to determine, how much the dividend will be. So there was an article that came out that is you can find this on the Texas A&M website. It says oil prices lead and land prices follow, and it's from Tierra Grande magazine. It talks about real estate and the price of oil in Texas. Apparently, there's a very strong correlation coefficient, something like on average, something like 0.96 average statewide between the price of oil and the price of rural land in Texas, right? So, and that's based upon, how much oil is there. Now, the Oro Grande Basin is in Section 2, and that has the lowest correlation coefficient because people didn't look for oil there at first. But now that we found a bunch of oil there, I expect that correlation coefficient to go up. Okay. So how do we do the calculation? So it starts off by we enter the price of oil, and then we figure out how much it costs to get the oil out of the ground. That's called the COGS cost, the cost of goods sold. So we start off with about $75 for the price of oil, let's just say. Subtract $25 for the COGS cost. That's on average what it costs U.S. oil companies to get oil out of the ground anywhere in the world, on average, right? EIA estimates. EIA is 24. We'll just make it 25 for ease of convenience, right? Ease of calculation. Now, according to Texas A&M, when you get oil that's still in the ground, right? But you haven't pumped it out yet. You haven't built the rigs and anything. That typically sells for between 12 to 15% of the price of a barrel of oil, right? So you multiply the whole thing by 12%, say, worst case, and we get about $6, right? Because you got a gross revenue of $50, multiplied by 12%, you got $6. of that, Torchlight has a 49% revenue interest. This is seen in the Form 10Q that came out of March 31, 2021, right, for Torchlight Resources. So if we look at that, we see that there's a 49% revenue interest. So now we're down to $2.94 when you apply that 49%. Now, there were about 3.7 billion barrels of oil. That's the median estimate for the amount of oil. It's not the high-end estimate, but the high end is around 5. But let's just say we're at the median, right, or the medium end of the oil estimate at $3.7 billion. So you take that $2.95 or so and multiply it by $3.7 billion, and you wind up with $10.878 billion. Factor in corporate tax, 21%, underwriter fee of 10%, and now you're talking about $7.5 billion or so. Divide that across 175 million shares. That's the number RollerPigeons originally used, and you come up with about $42.89 per share for the medium estimate, right? Now, we'll also do a low-end calculation. On the low-end side, we were looking at something like 2.1 billion barrels of oil, which works out to $6.174 billion for the value of oil in the ground. Add in the corporate tax, the underwriter fee, and you've got about $4.26 billion for the Torchlight for the value of the oil in the ground. Divide across 175 million shares, and you wind up with $24 or so. Okay, that's the low end side. Now, it turns out, so those are the standard RollerPigeons calculations, right? Now, it turns out that Bank of America sees $120 oil in 2022. Not only that, JP Morgan is seeing $125 per barrel of oil in 2022 and $150 in 2023. So they're saying the price of oil is going up. And other people are saying, look, we're not really investing a lot in oil right now, in the Middle East, at least, in terms of Saudi Arabia. So, due to the pandemic and whatnot, they would need to invest at up to, around $525 billion per year just to avoid a supply crunch. So people are thinking a supply crunch is going to come up sometime next year. And what does that mean? So that means that the calculations will vary because the price of oil is going to vary. Okay. So let's see what happens if the price of oil increases. So let's just remove all the extraneous info, and we'll put everything off to the side. And we see that we're at $42.89 up to $24, okay, with $75 per barrel. At $80 per barrel, you do the calculations, you got $47 at the median estimate. 85, you got $51. At $90 per oil, you've got $55. Okay? We're still not up to the 120 yet. $95, you're at $60 dividend. At $100 per barrel of oil, if the price of oil gets there at the time of the sale, the dividend is $64. $110 brings you to $72, or almost $73. And $120 gets you to $81.49, almost $81.50. Now we got a lot of numbers here, so it's much easier just to put it into a graph. And this shows you where the price of oil would be going if the price of oil increases, and if the price of oil is high at the time of the sale, right? So the other possibility is that the price of oil doesn't increase. Suppose the price of oil decreases, right? So let's start off with $75 per barrel and see what happens. If the price of oil were $70 per barrel, that means our dividend would be about $38.60. If it drops down to $60, that means your dividend would also drop down to about $30. At $50, your dividend was now around $20. At $40, your dividend is now around $12.87. It's getting down there. Finally, at $30, you got about $4.29 for your dividend, because you're getting very close to the COGS cost. There's not much money down there. So you put the entire thing into a chart, and this is what you get. You're going anywhere from $4.29 for $30 per barrel oil at the time of the sale, all the way up to $81 if oil gets to $120 per barrel. So we see that Exxon and a lot of oil companies and Chevron they're making tons of money right now off of $80 per barrel oil. In fact, they're making record profits. Oil prices are up since the start of the year, but recently they've been down. They're down to about $71 right now. Okay. Interest rates, interestingly enough, are at near zero. That means that the cost of finance stuff is pretty cheap. It's about 3.25%. So if you had to get a loan to buy anything, it's probably a good idea to get a loan. Now, the former CEO of Torchlight, John Berta, he hasn't sold any shares. He actually said this in a tweet when someone asked him, hey, have you sold any shares? And so all that's going on, the price of oil is dropping. And then what happens is that Metamaterials provides an update, and they say that the dividend or the spinout will be delayed until Q1 of 2022. Now, with the price of oil potentially going up in 2022 to $120 a barrel, that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We could wind up getting a larger dividend. So that's a possibility. But anyway, that caused a lot of people to freak out because they're like, oh, well, maybe they're going to spin out. Maybe it's not going to happen. Who knows, right? But in either case, they said early Q1 of 2022. So anyway, John Berta says at this point, hey, look, they've provided their update and the situation's binary. If you want, MMTLP is trading right now. If you want an exit ramp, you can go and sell your MMTLP shares. If not, you can just hold on and see what happens in the next couple weeks, because we're talking early Q1. So Q1 is January, February, March, right? The end of Q1 would be March, mid Q1 would be February, early Q1 would be January. So we're probably talking sometime around January, maybe February timeframe, Anyway, John Berta seems to know something, because he says, I cannot comment further until all the information is public. So he knows something, he hasn't sold, and he's hanging on. So that's quite interesting. And also, Metamaterials, MMTLP, the dividend shares, they sold at the last price I see is $1.43 on December 13th, 2021. So that's what the price is to buy shares that would get you dividends. And yeah, so that's where we're at right now. So take all that into context, and you can figure out where I think this is headed. So again, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. This information is intended for entertainment and educational purposes only. And that ends the part one of what Metamaterials is in terms of the Torchlight dividend shares and the Torchlight dividend process. Anyway, that's where we're at. Bye.